pretty good team.
That was pretty. It was
What
pretty
made
decent.
that team so good, you two?
Welcome back to Clark USA fans. Fire Basketball today, we're diving into the moment that didn't just elevate a player, it shifted an entire industry. This isn't just a basketball story. This is a power shift. Applause. Clark for 3, that's 13. The crowd erupts. The arena is electric. The momentum is building. And in the middle of that rising energy, one name keeps getting louder, Caitlin Clark. For 27 years, Nike had not placed a women's basketball player at the center of a Super Bowl commercial. 27 years of waiting, of hesitation, of playing it safe. Then they stopped waiting. Out of every global icon, every champion, every guaranteed marketing win, they chose Caitlin Clark, a player still early in her professional career. Not a retired legend, not a decades-long superstar, a rising force. Why her? Why now? Super Bowl airtime costs around $16 million for just 62 seconds. That's not just an ad, that's a statement. And when that commercial aired, something broke the traditional model. Within 24 hours, it generated tens of millions of views. In a single quarter, one athlete was driving a staggering share of an entire league's economic momentum. Ticket sales rising, merchandise flying, media conversations exploding. How does one player move an entire industry that fast? Because this wasn't random. It was building long before the Super Bowl spotlight, before signature shoe announcements, before mainstream fans even knew how to spell her name, before casual viewers tuned in. Caitlin Clark was already shifting energy on and off the court. And the real turning point? When State Farm made the call. They didn't offer her a small regional ad. They didn't tuck her into the background of a larger campaign. They put her front and center in a national commercial alongside Jake from State Farm, making her the first NCAA athlete ever to receive that level of placement with the insurance giant. Now think about the timing. College athletes had only recently gained the right to profit from their name, image, and likeness. Most were signing local dealership deals or regional sponsorships. Caitlin? She was operating at a completely different altitude. But what made that commercial legendary wasn't just the opportunity, it was the execution. Every line landed. Every reaction felt natural. Her chemistry with Jake wasn't forced, it flowed. Viewers weren't watching an athlete awkwardly reading from a script. They were watching someone who understood the camera, someone who knew timing, someone who could make 60 seconds feel like entertainment, not advertising. That authenticity is what brands spend millions trying to manufacture. She wasn't playing a character. She was simply being herself, and the camera loved it. The results were undeniable. According to campaign data highlighted by the Shorty Awards, 2 million video views, over 115,000 social engagements, 157 million impressions across State Farm's channels. But here's the number that truly matters. Her ad was 46% more effective at driving engagement than the average State Farm commercial. 46%. That's not a small boost. That's dominance. Fans obsessed over the details. The pause before a punchline. The slight smirk when she knew she nailed a line. The way she casually handled a basketball like it wasn't a prop, it was part of her identity. She didn't feel like a paid spokesperson. She felt like your favorite hooper who just happened to be in a national commercial. And suddenly, millions of people who had never watched a women's basketball game in their lives knew exactly who Caitlin Clark was. That one commercial opened doors most athletes spend entire careers trying to unlock. Then came the Super Bowl spotlight. Then came the signature shoe conversations. Then came the economic ripple effect across the league. This wasn't hype. It was leverage. It was timing. It was cultural momentum meeting elite skill. And Clark USA fans, this was just the beginning. If you want, I can now expand this into an even longer, more dramatic YouTube-style script with stronger hooks, retention loops, and a powerful ending call to action. Fire Basketball.
Tremendous move, and we are tied right now. Clark to
Unlock. That's the word. Because the doors didn't just open, they unlocked. And she walked through them without blinking. For years, women's basketball had been knocking, waiting, building, grinding in packed college arenas and sold-out rivalry games without always getting the biggest national platform. And then came the moment that didn't feel like a test run. It felt like a declaration. For 27 years, Nike had not placed women's basketball at the center of a Super Bowl commercial. 27 years of the biggest stage in advertising passing by without a female hooper leading the message. Other sports dominated. Other storylines took the spotlight. Other athletes were handed the microphone. Then came Super Bowl 59. And this time, Nike didn't whisper. They made a statement. Front and center stood Caitlin Clark, not as a background cameo, not as a supporting piece, but as a face of the moment. A symbol of a shift already in motion. The commercial was titled, "You Can't Win, So Win." 62 seconds. That's all it lasted. But in those 62 seconds, something bigger than a product launch unfolded. And she wasn't alone. Nike assembled what felt like an all-star summit of elite performance. You saw Aya Wilson. You saw Sabrina Ionescu. You saw Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. You saw Sha'Carri Richardson. You saw Jordan Chiles. Different sports. Different journeys. One unified message. You'll be told you can't do it. You'll be doubted. You'll be underestimated. So win anyway. It wasn't just motivational. It felt confrontational in the best way. A challenge and a rallying cry rolled into one. Set against the thunder of Led Zeppelin, narrated with weight and gravitas, the ad felt less like a commercial and more like a manifesto for every athlete who had ever been told to shrink themselves. But here's where it stops being emotional and starts being historic. Within 24 hours of airing, the commercial racked up more than 66 million views. 66 million in a single day. Analysts estimated the earned media value in the multi-million-dollar range, extraordinary for any debut moment on that stage. And the sentiment? Overwhelmingly positive. Roughly 75% positive sentiment. Ranked in the top 1% for social power among all Super Bowl 59 ads. Top 1%. On the most-watched television event of the year. That's not a good ad. That's cultural penetration. Nike reportedly invested around $16 million for that Super Bowl slot. That's not a small marketing decision. That's trust at the highest corporate level. And they trusted Caitlin Clark to help make it resonate. She delivered. Absolutely. Unquestionably. But what made this moment transcend traditional sports marketing wasn't just the numbers. It was the bridge it built. On one side, you had massive corporate sports branding, polished production, calculated messaging, strategic global reach. On the other side, you had grassroots hoop culture, the gym runs, the sold-out college arenas, the young girls practicing logo threes after school, the community that had been pushing women's basketball forward long before it was trendy. In 62 seconds, Caitlin connected those two worlds. And when those worlds connect cleanly, without friction, without feeling forced, that's when movements happen. She didn't just elevate her personal brand. She elevated the entire conversation around women's basketball in American sports culture. And here's where it gets even more interesting. What separates Caitlin Clark from the typical athlete endorsement playbook isn't just the size of her deals. It's the ecosystem she's building. Most athletes stack sponsorships. Logo here, appearance there, social post. Done. But this feels different. It feels intentional. Every partnership connects to performance, to routine, to lifestyle, to the identity fans already associate with her. Take Gatorade. They didn't just put her face on a bottle and call it a campaign. They built a narrative around hydration, recovery, and preparation. Around the unseen hours, the early mornings, the repetition behind the highlights. When she talks about staying focused, about helping her team win, about exceeding expectations, it doesn't sound rehearsed. It sounds aligned. This crowd, this moment, this environment, did it meet your expectations? They always exceed. That line doesn't just apply to fans. It applies to the trajectory. Because what we're watching isn't a hot streak. It's structural. Ticket demand surges. Merchandise spikes. Television ratings climb. Entire arenas sell out when her name appears on the schedule. That's not hype. That's economic gravity. And gravity changes ecosystems. One player driving a measurable share of a league's attention. One athlete becoming a gateway for casual fans who never previously tuned into women's basketball. That's leverage. And here's the key. It feels organic. She still handles the basketball like it's an extension of her identity. Still pulls up from deep with the same confidence. Still talks about team success before individual glory. The corporate machine may be massive. The stage may be brighter than ever. But the core hasn't shifted. That's why it works. Because audiences can sense authenticity instantly. They know when something is forced. They know when something is manufactured. This doesn't feel manufactured. It feels like timing meeting readiness. It feels like years of grassroots growth finally intersecting with global visibility. It feels like a player who is always going to walk through that door, and when it unlocked, she didn't hesitate. She stepped through.
Calm.
Focused. Unblinking. And in doing so, she didn't just win a marketing cycle. She helped redefine what is possible for women's basketball at the highest commercial level. Clark USA fans, this isn't just about a Super Bowl ad. It's about momentum becoming movement. It's about infrastructure catching up to influence. It's about a spotlight finally aligning with performance. And if this is just the early chapter, then what comes next might be even bigger. Fire basketball.
Combining for 42 of Vegas's 61 points. Clark.
Now, let's talk about the part of the story that proves this isn't hype. It's infrastructure. It's strategy. It's long-term dominance being built in real time. The whole package tied directly to Caitlin's work ethic and her style of play. Nothing felt random. Nothing felt forced. Every collaboration looked like a natural extension of who she already was on the court. Relentless, precise, confident from deep range, and unapologetically competitive. When Gatorade stepped in, they didn't just run a commercial and move on. They built a narrative. They centered the campaign around preparation, hydration, recovery, repetition, discipline. It wasn't about flashy moments. It was about the grind behind the highlights. Suddenly, every sip of Gatorade felt symbolic. Every bottle felt like it had her stamp of approval. Fans didn't just buy it because it was a sports drink. They bought it because it felt like supporting her journey. It became something more personal than merchandise, more intimate than a jersey. It felt like participating in the routine of a player they believed in. And then came the limited edition drop. The special Caitlin edition Gatorade bottles weren't just products sitting on shelves. They became collectibles almost overnight. Stores sold out within days. Restocks were rushed. Social media exploded with unboxing videos, routine breakdowns, hydration challenges, and fans proudly displaying their finds like rare sneaker releases. People weren't casually purchasing. They were hunting. The campaign turned into what marketers dream about but rarely achieve: behavioral adoption. Kids, aspiring hoopers, even casual fans started mirroring her warm-up habits, her recovery focus, her daily preparation. They followed it like a blueprint. That's not endorsement-level influence. That's lifestyle influence. And lifestyle influence is priceless. Because once consumers adjust their habits around you, you're no longer a spokesperson. You're a standard. Then Wilson's Sporting Goods entered the picture, and the story elevated again. Caitlin launched the first ever female signature basketball collection with Wilson. But here's the critical detail. She wasn't just posing for promotional photos. She wasn't just cashing a check. She was co-creating. She had real input: colors, textures, grip feel, material balance, aesthetic direction. The final product didn't just carry her name. It carried her personality. It reflected her vibe on the court: bold but controlled, sharp but elegant. That distinction matters. Because there's a massive difference between being the face of a product and being a partner in its creation. When an athlete is seen as a collaborator rather than a model, brands treat them differently. They invest differently. Consumers respond differently. Respect multiplies. Loyalty deepens. Longevity increases. To understand the magnitude of that moment, look back at 2003. When LeBron James released his first signature shoe with Nike, it marked a turning point in the NBA's commercial landscape. It signaled that a young athlete could carry an entire product line, that his personal brand had enough gravitational pull to move global inventory. Caitlin achieved the women's basketball equivalent of that moment, and she did it before fully settling into her WNBA career. Most athletes spend a decade grinding toward that level of trust. She reached it in her first professional seasons. That's acceleration. And just when the momentum felt like it couldn't possibly rise any higher, Nike made another announcement that sent shockwaves through the sneaker world and sports marketing industry simultaneously. They unveiled her personal logo. 2 interlocking C's. Simple.
Clean.
Elegant. At first glance, some critics called it basic. But that reaction is exactly why it works. The greatest athlete logos in history share one trait: instant recognition and infinite adaptability.
Think about the Jumpman.
Think about RF. Think about TB12. The most powerful logos are not complex. They are scalable, memorable, flexible across product categories. 2 interlocking C's can go anywhere: hoodies, sneakers, compression gear, backpacks, water bottles, phone cases. It scales up to billboards. It scales down to embroidery. It looks premium in every context. That's not basic design. That's strategic brilliance. Because a logo isn't just art, it's a long-term commercial weapon. And the logo was only the beginning. Her first full signature shoe is scheduled to drop in October 2026, roughly 3 years into her professional career. 3 years. Most athletes wait 10. Some wait 15. Many never get that opportunity at all. Sneaker industry projections estimate that launch could generate between $100 million and $150 million in sales.
Pause on that.
Those numbers are typically reserved for global icons with decades of brand equity.
That cost Seattle 3 points, and they should have never.
Veterans who have spent 15 to 20 years embedding themselves into culture. Caitlin is projecting those figures while she's still introducing herself to casual sports audiences. That tells you everything about how the industry views her ceiling. Nike doesn't see her as a short-term trend. They don't see her as a viral moment. They see her as a long-term marketing engine, someone who can consistently move product, yes, but more importantly, someone who can move conversations. That's the real currency. Products follow culture. Culture follows influence. Influence follows authenticity. She bridges competitive excellence with corporate trust and grassroots relatability in a way that feels seamless. The signature shoe represents the ultimate validation in modern athlete branding. It means a company is willing to allocate massive resources, manufacturing, design teams, global distribution networks, promotional budgets, based on their belief in your staying power. It's not just about performance on the court. It's about perceived longevity. Nike is placing that bet on Caitlin before she's even reached her athletic prime. Before the MVP-level seasons stack up. Before the championship runs define legacy. Before the full arc of her career is written. That level of corporate confidence speaks volumes. It signals that decision-makers believe her influence isn't peaking, it's compounding. And when you zoom out, the pattern becomes clear. Gatorade built the routine. Wilson built the equipment identity. Nike built the global branding platform. Each partnership connects. Each layer reinforces the next. It's not scattered endorsements. It's an integrated universe. Fans aren't just buying basketballs or bottles or apparel. They're buying into a narrative of preparation, ambition, and fearless range. They're aligning themselves with a style of play that feels modern and audacious. And here's what makes it powerful. She still talks about team success first. She still centers winning over personal glory. She still handles interviews with the same calm confidence she shows pulling up from 30 feet. That consistency protects the brand. Because when commercial growth outruns authenticity, audiences disengage. But here, the authenticity is driving the growth. Nike betting early. Wilson trusting her creative input. Gatorade building campaigns around her habits. It's a coordinated ecosystem built around long-term cultural pull. And Clark USA fans, that's the difference between a popular athlete and a transformational one. One sells products. The other builds platforms. One rides waves. The other changes tides. And the most important detail of all, she hasn't even hit her prime yet. Fire basketball.
She's 22 years old, the same as her jersey.
Now, let's talk about competition, context, comparison. Because to truly understand what Caitlin Clark has accomplished, you have to zoom out. You have to stack her trajectory against the other rising stars in women's basketball, not to diminish them, not to disrespect their grind, but to properly measure the scale of what's happening. Inventory. That's the word executives obsess over. The right level of inventory. Enough supply to meet demand, but not so much that momentum fades. When Nike commits to a campaign, they study competition, context, timing, and market readiness.
They don't gamble blindly.
So, let's look at the landscape. Start with Sabrina Ionescu. Sabrina has serious game, elite skill set, strong endorsement growth. She's built credibility through performance and professionalism. Her signature shoe with Nike was a meaningful step forward for women's basketball visibility. She's respected, marketable, legitimate, but she hasn't headlined a Super Bowl advertisement. She hasn't been positioned at the absolute center of a 60+ million view cultural explosion in a 24-hour window. Her growth has been impressive, but measured. Strong, but incremental. Now look at Angel Reese. Angel signed a high-profile deal with Reebok, and the buzz was immediate. Media attention surged. Social conversations spiked. Early hype was undeniable. But according to industry chatter, product sales didn't consistently match the early promotional volume. Momentum appeared to cool by mid-season. That doesn't diminish her influence. It highlights the difference between attention and conversion. Buzz is loud. Revenue is quiet, but decisive. Then there's Aya Wilson, an absolute superstar. MVP-level dominance. Strong Nike partnerships. Years of excellence. Her brand has been built brick by brick through championships, consistency, and leadership. But even Aya didn't enter the league carrying this level of viral marketing heat. Her commercial power grew alongside her on-court resume. Admirable. Sustainable. Traditional. Caitlin's trajectory? It's accelerated. Considered Jewel Lloyd. Respected.
Proven.
Consistent sponsorship presence. She's been valued in marketing circles for years. But her campaigns haven't exploded into mainstream cultural conversation the way Caitlin's have. Her recognition sits comfortably within basketball audiences. Caitlin's recognition spills outside it. Then look at Cameron Brink. Rookie phenom. Massive NIL momentum from her college career. Strong brand appeal. Visual marketability. Early endorsement traction. But she hasn't yet combined national advertising centerpiece placement with a signature product launch that drives measurable sell-through at scale. She hasn't converted casual viewers into paying consumers in the same way. And that's the distinction. Now look back at Caitlin's numbers. 66 million views in a single day from a Nike Super Bowl campaign. Millions in earned media value. Real product sell-through, from Gatorade limited drops to Wilson collections. This isn't theoretical engagement. It's physical inventory moving off shelves. She's not just generating clicks. She's converting attention into revenue. She's not just trending. She's monetizing momentum.
No space. Connecticut everywhere. Here's Clark with Banham guarding her. Clark.
And in marketing, that difference is everything. Because lots of athletes generate buzz. Lots of athletes trend on social media. Lots of athletes go viral for a moment. But converting that attention into sustained commercial traction, into products that actually sell out, into campaigns that materially impact corporate earnings, that requires something rare. It requires authenticity that resonates across demographics. It requires timing aligned with cultural appetite. It requires relatability strong enough to turn observers into participants. People don't just watch her highlights. They buy into her story. They feel invested in her journey. And here's what makes it extraordinary. She's been building a professional-level brand before fully settling into her WNBA career. Most players focus on performance first, branding later. Caitlin's brand and performance have scaled simultaneously. While peers build gradually, she has leaped. Outside arenas like Northwestern's Welsh Ryan Arena, games start to feel like home crowds wherever she goes. Road environments shift. Ticket demand spikes. Secondary markets inflate. Television ratings follow. That's not anecdotal. That's economic behavior. And now we reach the number that makes executives sit up straight. Analysts estimate Caitlin drives approximately 26% of overall WNBA economic activity. Let that settle. One player, over a quarter of an entire league's economic engine. Ticket sales, merchandise revenue, television ratings, sponsorship valuations, brand partnerships, all significantly influenced by a single athlete. That's not standard star power. That's gravitational pull. In most leagues, even the biggest superstars influence slices of growth, not entire economic quarters. This level of concentration is rare in professional sports history. It means when she plays, attendance shifts. When she's featured, ratings rise. When her merchandise drops, inventory moves. When her name trends, league visibility expands. It's a multiplier effect. And here's why the distinction matters so much. Attention is temporary. Economic influence is structural. When one athlete becomes directly tied to revenue patterns, corporate strategy adjusts. Broadcast scheduling adjusts. Marketing budgets adjust. The ecosystem reorganizes. And that's what makes this moment different from a simple viral surge. Caitlin's marketing ascent isn't just fast, it's foundational. She's pulling new demographics into women's basketball. Young fans, casual sports viewers, even people who previously ignored the WNBA are now tuning in out of curiosity and staying because the product delivers. That magnetic force is rare. It doesn't diminish the greatness of her peers. It highlights the uniqueness of her timing, skill set, and narrative alignment. Skill alone isn't enough. Marketability alone isn't enough. Viral fame alone isn't enough. But when elite performance, cultural timing, corporate trust, and fan relatability intersect at the same moment, you get acceleration. You get inventory planning conversations inside Nike headquarters. You get sponsorship valuations recalculated. You get analysts modeling league growth differently. You get a player whose presence changes the math. And Clark USA fans, that's the real story. Not comparison for the sake of rivalry. Not hype for the sake of clicks. But context for the sake of understanding scale. Because what we're watching isn't just a star rising. It's an economic catalyst forming in real time. And that's not normal. Fire basketball.
And she loses.
What we're witnessing isn't just exceptional. It's disruptive. When analysts estimate that Caitlin Clark drives roughly a quarter of total league-related economic activity, that's not a fun stat for social media debates. That's the kind of number that forces boardrooms to rethink strategy. That's the kind of impact that changes how leagues evaluate star power and how corporations calculate partnership value. In most professional sports ecosystems, even generational superstars influence segments of growth. They boost ratings. They sell jerseys. They help increase sponsorship visibility. But rarely does one athlete become directly associated with such a large slice of total economic momentum. That's structural influence. And structural influence changes behavior at the highest levels. When Forbes lists her among the most powerful women in sports and reports that she earned approximately $8.1 million as a rookie, pause and process that. A first-year professional athlete generating over $8 million, with endorsement contracts structured to expand significantly as her career matures. That's not a late career victory lap. That's an opening chapter. Most athletes spend years proving themselves before major brands fully commit. They grind through seasons, build resumes, collect accolades, and eventually earn large-scale commercial trust. Caitlin compressed that timeline. She didn't wait for a decade of dominance to validate investment. She entered the league with commercial infrastructure already forming around her. And then there's the digital acceleration. Between March and April of 2024 alone, her Instagram following surged by roughly 775,000 new followers. In one concentrated window. That's not gradual growth. That's a spike. Her TikTok audience jumped by approximately 57% during that same stretch. That kind of surge signals something deeper than curiosity. It signals commitment. Fans weren't just watching highlights on television and moving on. They were actively following, sharing, commenting, recreating, engaging. They were locking in. They were participating. In modern sports marketing, attention is currency, but engagement is equity. Passive viewers inflate numbers temporarily. Active communities compound value. When audiences begin to mirror routines, repost content, debate performances, and track milestones like invested stakeholders, the relationship transforms. They're no longer spectators. They're aligned participants in the journey. And when you combine traditional media dominance with digital engagement growth, something powerful forms, a marketing flywheel. One successful campaign generates headlines. Headlines drive social engagement. Social engagement attracts new brand partnerships. New partnerships create additional campaigns. Those campaigns create more visibility. The cycle accelerates. It feeds itself. And Caitlyn sits at the center of that acceleration with a significant first-mover advantage in the modern era of women's basketball marketing. Timing matters. She arrived at the precise intersection of NIL expansion, social media maturity, shifting corporate priorities, and growing appetite for women's sports visibility. That convergence doesn't happen often. And when it does, the athlete positioned correctly can redefine the blueprint. Because what she's building goes far beyond personal endorsement accumulation. She's modeling a new template. Traditionally, athlete branding followed a predictable arc. Prove yourself on the court. Win consistently. Accumulate accolades. Then brands come calling.
Knocks it down! Her third three of the quarter!
It was linear. Performance first. Commercial expansion later. Caitlyn disrupted that sequence. She's proving that commercial infrastructure and athletic development can scale simultaneously, not sequentially. That's a fundamental shift. And particularly for female athletes who historically faced limited marketing windows and uneven brand prioritization compared to male counterparts, that shift carries weight. If a player can generate this magnitude of commercial traction before reaching athletic prime, what does that imply about the broader ceiling of women's sports marketing? It implies underestimation. It implies unrealized value. It implies that traditional metrics were lagging behind actual audience appetite. When Nike invests approximately $16 million in a Super Bowl placement centered around women's basketball, that decision isn't emotional. It's data-driven. It reflects confidence in measurable engagement potential. That investment signals something larger than belief in one player. It signals recognition that the women's sports audience is not niche. It's scalable, engaged, and commercially viable at the highest levels. Caitlyn becomes proof of concept. The case study. The slide in future marketing presentations. The reference point in boardroom discussions when executives debate allocation strategies. She's evidence that modern audiences reward authenticity, competitiveness, and narrative clarity regardless of traditional gender-based marketing assumptions. And she's still early in the arc. Most athletes master the game. A smaller group learns how to sell it. But what's rare, extremely rare, is understanding the system around it. Understanding leverage. Understanding timing. Understanding positioning. Caitlyn appears to recognize that intersection between culture, commerce, and competition, and she's operating there intentionally. She's not waiting for the industry to define her value. She's influencing how the industry defines value. When you see partnerships with State Farm, Gatorade, and Nike, these aren't isolated endorsement checks. They're signals. Markers of a broader shift in resource allocation and brand strategy. They indicate which athletes corporations believe can move product, expand demographic reach, and reshape conversation. And here's the critical question. Is this a moment? Or is it a movement? Moments spike and fade. Movements restructure. If one player can redefine valuation metrics at this scale, influencing ticket sales, merchandise trends, television negotiations, and sponsorship frameworks, then the ripple effects extend far beyond her individual career. Leagues adjust scheduling. Broadcasters adjust coverage. Sponsors adjust budgets. Competitors adjust strategies. When value gets redefined at this magnitude, the next move doesn't just affect one athlete. It recalibrates the industry. And that's why the urgency exists. Because windows close. Opportunities consolidate. Early recognition becomes advantage. The brands that identified her potential early now hold positioning benefits that late adopters may struggle to replicate. The executives who understood the shift before it fully materialized gained leverage. The ones who hesitated may be chasing. So the real question isn't whether Caitlin Clark's commercial impact is impressive. It's whether stakeholders across sports truly understand what it represents. Is it simply a breakout rookie with strong endorsement traction? Or is it the early stage of a structural evolution in how women's basketball and women's sports more broadly are marketed, valued, and invested in? Because when cultural momentum, athletic excellence, and corporate strategy collide this cleanly, the outcome tends to be lasting. And when one athlete begins redefining value at scale, the next chapter rarely stays contained. It expands. So now the question becomes simple, but urgent. Who recognizes what's unfolding in real time? And who's about to realize they were watching history just a little too late? Fire basketball.